Hi everybody, welcome to Riverdale Public Library. In today's craft, we are going to take a very plain, empty pot and we are going to decorate it, and then we're going to plant a poem in it because it is April and April is National Poetry Month. So not only are flowers starting to bloom in the library, poetry is starting to bloom, and we put out a whole display of poetry books near the children's room. So if you'd like to borrow some for inspiration, they are right there. And you can also look inside the children's room at the section with the Dewey number 811, and that is poetry. And when I say plant a poem, it means that instead of planting seeds, we're going to just take a piece of paper, write down a poem that we like, or make up a poem, write your own poem, and then we can plant it in the pot. Or you could just write a poem and put it somewhere else and plant a flower instead. Flower pots have many uses. So we're going to start today with a pot that I made, and we're going to be using some of these ideas for the pot that you have, which looks just like this. So what I did with this pot was I took some yarn and I wrapped it around part of the pot, and then I painted some stripes. I painted some more up here, and then I took the yarn and I made some spirals with the yarn and glued them on. So there's all kinds of things you can do with paint and yarn. These are just what I chose. So we're going to try some of that today. We're going to start with the yarn. Your kits will have some yarn in it. Some of them are this shade, some of them are this shade, some of them are purple. I did the purple, green, and blue shades on this pot. So let's try the pink and purple shades to decorate this pot today. Okay, so you're going to need your yarn. You're going to need some paint. You're going to need some glue, and not a glue stick. That probably won't work. You'll need some real liquid glue, and paintbrushes and water, and a piece of paper, and your kits also have a pipe cleaner in it for the poetry bloom stem, right? So that should take care of everything. And if you have other materials, you can also glue those on the pot as well. But we're just going to stick to paint and yarn today. So we're going to start with the yarn. And you could, if you want, wrap yarn around the entire pot. But whether you do all of the pot or part of the pot, it's probably a good idea not to use one long string, okay? Because you're going to be gluing it as it goes along, and sometimes it's just easier to glue smaller pieces and let that dry and then move on. Okay. Also, when you're gluing it, you're going to be pushing those together so you don't see the pot through the yarn. And if you're using one big piece, that's going to be hard to do. So I'm just going to take some yarn here and cut a piece about, I don't know, a couple of feet long. You can make it shorter if you want. And we're going to start by taking a brush, not the one you use for paint, but just take a brush just to use for the glue. Or you could take a straw or the tip of a pencil, anything to apply the glue with. I'm just going to use a small brush here. And I'm going to take some out of this container, but you can also pour some on a paper towel, and that will also work. And we're just going to dab some glue right under the rim of the pot, okay? Don't do the whole pot, because by the time you were to get to the lower pieces, the glue would be dry. So you just want to do a little bit just under the rim, but go all around. Doesn't have to be neat because it's going to be covered with yarn. You're not going to see the glue. And if you see it at first because it's wet, you will not see it once it is dry. Okay. So, adding some glue. Until it is all around the pot, just about ½ an inch. I wouldn't do more than that at this point. And then you're going to take your yarn, a piece of yarn, and you're going to start gluing it around. The main thing to pay attention to is keep that yarn close to the rim. You push it down on the glue and take your finger or pencil or straw, and you want to make sure as it goes around that it is going right under that rim. Just keep pushing it around, round, 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 round. Okay, and now we've actually put the yarn around just under the rim. And you're just going to keep doing, as long as your string keeps going, keep putting it under the previous part of yarn. And this yarn changes colors as it goes along, so it has a really nice effect. Okay, so just keep pushing that yarn around the flower pot. And we've put enough glue on that. ½ an inch is probably enough for it to go around 2 or 3 times. Okay, so once you're at a point where it's around 2 or 3 times, you want to keep pushing the yarn so that it's just under the piece before. You don't want any gaps there. And at some point, you're going to wrap it around and you're going to realize, oops, no more glue. And that's when you apply another ½ inch of glue. Okay, actually not even, for here we don't even have a lot of yarn left. So we're just going to put a little bit here, just enough to glue that last bit of yarn. And if the edge, you can see here the edge is a bit frayed, you can cut that off before you start the next piece. Okay, so now I've put about 2 feet of yarn around the vase, and I've glued it to the very end. And when I put my next piece down, you're going to start at that very end. And again, if you keep the pieces close to each other, you're not even really going to see the ends. Okay, so this is what we have so far. And you can see the colors changed as we went along. Okay, so I'm going to take another couple of feet. Where were we? Here we go. Okay, and just stop here. And again, you're going to do the same thing you did the first time. Take your brush, do 1/2 inch of glue on the side. And then immediately start wrapping more yarn around it. But the glue should stay wet long enough after you apply it. So that you can put that second piece on. Okay, so now we've got our second part ready to go. Glue is ready. It's on the pot. And you're going to start with your next piece. Here we go. And just connect it to the part before. Put it right next to it. And you're going to do the same thing. You're going to just start wrapping. Okay, it's a light color, so it's hard to see. You're going to start wrapping it around the gluey part of the vase until all of your string is down. But if you actually run out of the gluey spot before you've run out of yarn, you can cut that piece of yarn off. It's up to you. So I'm just going round and round. I'm just making it go round and round, but I'm pushing the yarn up so that it's up against the part that came before. Going. Almost reaching the bottom of the glue, where I put the glue. And it's not that every part of the yarn has to be attached with glue. You know, if you miss a few spots, that's okay, because you know, other spots nearby are glued on. But if you have too big a gap between where your glue is, then the yarn might not stay where it's supposed to. So here we are, we're almost at the end of where I put the glue. Oops. And yeah, we're pretty much at the end of that. So I'm going to add a little more so I can end this spot. And a little more, but not too much. Just enough to get this pink part on. Not adding that much. And so we can go all the way to the end of our yarn. almost there. Okay, and I'm just going to cut off the extra here. And then make sure that that little part at the end is glued on. We might even want to tuck it under a little bit, tuck it under the previous part, just a little bit. Okay, so now this is the effect we have with our yarn. And you could do this for the whole pot. You don't have to paint it all. Or you could do it halfway, or you could alternate. You could paint the next part and then put some yarn around the bottom. Or you could even take some short pieces and make the yarn go vertically. But we're going to choose now to do some painting, okay? And for this, you'll want a thicker brush. And pick whatever color you want. Colors, okay. And since I was working with pink and purple yarn, I'm actually going to do some pink and purple paint as well. So here is some purple. Let's start out with the pink. And in this pot, I did some vertical stripes. You don't have to do that. You could put flowers on it. You could put a picture of a motorcycle on it. It doesn't have to do with a plant. You could paint a dog or a cat or anything you want, or you could make it plain. I'm going to do some squiggles. Here we go. Some pink paint. Just like that. Okay. And the paint's a bit thin, so you can paint over it until all you see is the paint and not the pot. Make it thicker. And then you can you could do squiggles all around. Not all around, but and all I did was I just started them under where the yarn is. And I'm just going around and around until the end. And if you like everything exactly perfect, you could use a pencil and draw your design on the pot and then paint over that. That also works. Okay, so now we have some squiggles under the yarn. And now I'm going to wash my brush. And then I'm going to take some purple. And I'm going to do the same thing with the purple. And I'm going to put it right up against the pink. So they're right near each other. And so I'm just going to keep doubling that around the pot. Okay. And after I've done that, I could decide to fill in the rest with paint, or I could make a yarn pattern in here. So let's finish our purple here. It goes all the way around. Okay, so now we have pink and purple squiggles, and I'm going to let that dry, and then I'm going to do one more color that goes well. Since we have white on here, maybe I will choose white this time. Just make one more squiggle. Actually, I'm going to make it a thick squiggle and fill in the rest of the pot here. So I suggest that you pause for a moment, pause your tape, and finish painting, and then we'll continue. Okay, at this point, you've finished your painting the bottom of your pot, and you are letting it dry. And as you can see, I also painted the rim, and it is still drying, okay? So I just want to point out that when you're painting the rim of the pot, don't forget to paint the rim just at the top edge, okay? And also you want to be careful not to paint on the yarn underneath it. So I've left out a little bit here that I didn't paint. You want to take your brush very carefully when you're doing that edge here where the yarn is. Don't just like smear, you can smear it in the middle, but when you're doing your edges, you want to make sure they're covered, but that you don't have too much paint so it doesn't bleed onto the yarn. And you want to be very careful painting that edge, because if you can see, I haven't finished painting the edge of this yet. There's a little bit left there, but that's the part you have to be super careful about so it doesn't get onto the yarn. There we go. So now I've got the whole rim covered, and you're going to let that dry. And while you're letting that dry, you're going to take some of your yarn and you're going to cut 4 pieces that are 5 inches long. And when you cut them, remember, all of you have yarn that changes colors. So you want to make sure that the pieces you cut have more than one color on that piece. This one is a little clearer. This one has purple and it kind of shifts over to white. This one is pink and it shifts over to kind of a magenta color. There you go, it gets a little darker. This one goes from purple to magenta. And this one goes from very light pink to a darker rose pink. But whatever you do, it doesn't matter which colors you choose, just it will look nicer if if you cut pieces that are more than one color. Okay, so do that while your paint is drying, and then we will continue with the next part. Okay, so now you should have your pot completely painted, and you've cut 4 pieces of yarn in 2 different colors, about 5 inches long. And we're gonna make something that looks like these, okay? That I've glued onto the side of this pot. And as you can see, especially with this one, I used the blue and green yarn, and the inside looks green and the outside looks blue. And we're gonna do the same things with these. So, let's take the first piece. I'm gonna start at either end. If I want my inside to be white, I'll start at that end. If I want my inside to be purple, I'll start at that end. So let's start with the purple, all right? And you're gonna just put the yarn between your thumb and your index finger. And you're going to start turning it around, but keeping it flat. Use one hand to turn it and the other hand to hold each end, but you're keeping it as pressed between those 2 fingers so it stays mostly flat. It's not going to be perfectly flat, but it will be mostly flat. And you're going to, it's as if you're making a snail, okay? You're just going around and round and round and round until you've reached the end. And when that is done, since the other end was white, the outside of that circle is going to be white. We're going to go all the way to the end. Okay. And then look, I'm holding it between the 2 fingers. It's now a not completely flat, but mostly flat circle. Don't let it go. If you do, it will come apart. Then you'll start over again. Then you're going to take your glue, either with a brush or with a small hole here. And you're going to turn your pot over. And on the rim, you're going to put just enough glue, use your brush, so it's about the same size as that circle. You can glue it before, but if you do glue it before, so you don't have to hold the circle at the same time, make sure you do that circle fairly quickly before the glue dries. So we're going to make a little circle now on the rim of the pot. It's about the same size as the circle of yarn that you made. It can be a little bit bigger. If it's too small, the outside will come apart. So it's okay if you make it a little bit bigger, because when that glue dries, you're not going to see it anyway. So, yes, your pot might roll over. Mine just did. Okay, so you're going to go back to where that spot of glue is, and you're going to lay your little circle down onto the glue and press there until it's at least semi-dry. And again, make sure there's enough glue so that the whole circle is attached. And as I did here. So there you go. Your circle is now attached. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go exactly across from where the circle you just glued is. Okay. So I'm just going to take my finger and I'm going to go across to the other side of the rim of the pot, okay? And that's where I'm going to put another dab of glue. In fact, just to mark that spot, I'm just going to put a little bit right there, okay? And actually, as long as you do your circle fairly quickly, you can now put that circle there. Again, you want to make it about the same size as the circle you're making, so that the entire circle of yarn sticks. Okay, so there's my glue. And now I'm going to take the next one, and which is the magenta here, purple out there. So we can start, let's start with the magenta in the middle. Okay, and again, we're going to take our thumb and our index finger, our pointer, and hold on to it and keep going round and 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 round until we have our little yarn circle. Okay, and this one, the magenta is inside and the outside is more purple. Okay, right there. And we're going to glue it on that spot. And if there isn't enough glue, just take your brush or whatever you're using to apply the glue and just stick some more on, and then put the yarn on it. And again, even if you see the yarn, the glue on the yarn, once it dries, you won't. And sometimes, the middle might start falling apart and sticking out, and if it does, just take some glue, put it under the yarn inside that circle, and just keep dabbing it until that middle part is also sticking. Okay, so now I have my second circle, okay? And then I'm going to find the middle point between the two. I'm going to make my last two circles. So let's take some glue. I'm going to look halfway between this side and this side. Put some glue down. And we'll make our third circle. There. And then you're going to take your yarn and make your circles again and then glue it on, and then we'll continue to the poem part. Okay, so once we are done with our pot, we can fill it with dirt, plant some seeds, and grow a plant there. That's what it's for. It's useful. Other thing you can do, just for fun, because it is National Poetry Month, is you can plant a poem. And what I did here was I took a poem from one of our poetry books. This one is called Just Like Me by Vanessa Brantley Newton. And I found a poem that I liked that she wrote in that book. And I cut out a circle. And I wrote the poem on the circle. It's called You. If you were a flower, I'd pick you to go inside of a beautiful bouquet, and that would make my day. That's by Vanessa Brandley Newton. And then on the other side, you could write a poem. And I wrote a poem. I found some poem ideas in this book. This is funny poetry. When you're a pirate dog. So if you're into pirates, you might get some ideas here. For example, here's Jerry the juggling pirate. And I'm going to start with the first verse. He's Jerry the juggling pirate. He's 7 feet tall at the shoulders. He juggles with ease anything he pleases, cannonballs, barrels, and boulders. Now, the poem goes on for 3 more stanzas, but you could imagine Jerry the juggling pirate and write a short poem about what else he juggles. Or, if that doesn't give you an idea, we could go to this book of silly poetry called I'm Just No Good at Rhyming. Because most people think, well, you know, I can read a poem, I see them in school, my friends are always coming up with good poems, but I can't rhyme ever. So this can give you some ideas in which you don't even have to rhyme. Or maybe it starts with a rhyme and you say, well, why do I have to rhyme? For example, we have this poem called, might sound familiar at first, The Nursery Rhyme Little Boy Blue, with some words replaced by some delicious Greek food. So this is not the usual Little Boy Blue from Mother Goose, the usual nursery rhyme. This is how it goes. Little boy blue, come blow your hummus. The pita bread's in the meadow, the cow's in the yogurt. Yep, that's a poem, and you can do that too. And then you can add to that poem and say, sorry, I have to stop you right there. This poem is too ridiculous. I don't think I can illustrate it. Can you try writing a different poem instead? That was a note from the author. And the illustrator, Lane Smith. So here's one. Never switch your laundry detergent with your dishwasher detergent. My forks are all fluffy, both handles and tines, while all of my underwear sparkles and shines. So you could write a short and silly poem like that, then write it on a circle and attach it to a pipe cleaner stem, which is in your kit, and I'll show you how to do that. So you just take one end and you bend it, just a short end like this, okay? About 2 inches from the end. You want to bend that, okay? And then you're going to twist that other end around, like so, okay? And then this is going to be the bottom of your stem. All you're doing is this. You just looped it around, right? Didn't do anything else. You just bent it at the top, looped it down. Here you go. Now you're going to take the long end and wrap it around just once. Okay? And then you take, see the part with the pointy end? If you pull out the 2 sides, oh, look, it's a leaf. Okay. And here is, and then you can take the other side at some point and also bend it, about halfway maybe. Bend it just like that. And then you're going to do the same thing. You're going to now you're going to take this end and wrap it around just once. Just once. Okay. And then I'm going to pull them upward. You're going to pull out the two sides here. Now you've got your other leaf. Okay. And then you can kind of adjust them and go a little sideways. So now you have a part that you can plant in the dirt. And you have the top, which you can use glue for your circle. I found it easier to use a stapler if you have it. It works better if you staple it. If you glue it, use a lot of glue and really let it dry, because it takes a while for pipe cleaners and the glue to dry. So once you have that, you take your dirt. Oh, you've got your plant. Maybe it's just a little plant. Maybe it needs company. Maybe it just needs a poem for company. And then you can take the end and plant your poem. And even if you decide not to plant a poem, writing poetry is a lot of fun. And you can be as silly as you want to, just like in that last book. And we have a whole bunch of these books at our library, so come see them and have fun finishing your craft. Happy April.